World headquarters in New York. This is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening back home in New York tonight. And tonight, the Cairo we left behind seems very different. Then again, every day in this 11-day drama has been very different. The protesters called today the day of departure, meaning President Mubarak's departure, but that was wishful thinking on their part, as he is still in place tonight. There was some violence today, but it was more peaceful, and a lot of the protesters took part in Friday prayers. The strange thing was those Mubarak supporters, the thugs, the street gangs, seemed to disappear today just as suddenly as they first appeared earlier this week in such awful fashion when we saw those ugly scenes of violence with Egyptians attacking fellow Egyptians. So what did today mean, and where are we headed possibly after this eventful week? Our chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel remains on post tonight in Cairo. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. The day began tense. The protesters were bracing for violence. It never really happened. President Mubarak may be adopting a new strategy: patience.
Several 100,000 gathered after Friday prayers to denounce President Hosni Mubarak and celebrate their unprecedented 11 days of continuous demonstrations. Families were back out. It was peaceful, well organized, even joyous.
The protesters are greeting new arrivals by singing, cheering them on, saying that Mubarak will go, we will not go.
Unlike the supporters of President Mubarak, who have attacked and chased down dozens of reporters, the anti-government protesters welcomed the media. One man today held a sign that said in Arabic, "Thank you, Facebook." The protesters called today the day of departure, the day Mubarak would leave.
Leave now, not tomorrow.
That didn't happen, but the demonstrators are gaining legitimacy here. Egypt's defense minister visited Tahrir today before most of the protesters arrived. It was the clearest indication yet that the military is protecting the protesters. A movement Egypt's vice president said only yesterday was led by Islamic groups and foreign journalists conspiring to bring Egypt to chaos. For the first time, the army established an effective defensive perimeter around Tahrir to avoid a repeat of Wednesday, when Mubarak loyalists, goon squads, attacked demonstrators on horseback with rocks, Molotov cocktails, and bullets, until the protesters fought back and held the square. Today, the wounded in that fight were paraded through the square, honored for their sacrifice in what is now being called here the Battle of Tahrir, Liberation. A man proudly showed us where he was hit by rocks and a shotgun. But while the army defended the protesters today, U.S. officials tell NBC News most of President Mubarak's top advisors, including from the military, are not telling him he needs to step down or leave the country. The army is still looking for an elegant solution, a combination of reforms and dialogue that would satisfy both sides. For now, Mubarak's strategy may be just to wait out the protests if he can. Today, his prime minister said the protests can continue as long as there's no violence. But U.S. officials worry an ongoing crisis is not in Egypt's or the United States' best interest. Cairo is growing more lawless. Violent confrontation continued today, although it was kept away from Tahrir Square. Groups like the Muslim Brotherhood are gaining ground while the country remains in chaos. And the uprising is spreading panic to other U.S. allies in the region. Perhaps for that reason alone, the revolt in Egypt was embraced today by Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei. It's an especially odd endorsement since Iran brutally repressed a pro-democracy movement in 2009. The Iranian regime won that fight. Egypt's future remains uncertain.
President Mubarak now may face a new rival. The popular Secretary General of the Arab League, Amr Moussa, spoke in Tahrir Square today. He's someone to watch. And Brian, that crackdown on journalists we spoke about the other day is still continuing. Al Jazeera reported that its offices were ransacked by pro-Mubarak supporters, and an Egyptian journalist who was shot last week has died. Brian?
Richard Engel, who along with our team on the ground remains in Cairo. Tough place to do business these days. Richard, thanks. And for the first time in more than a week, President Obama took reporters' questions about Egypt today. But no matter the question, the president was clearly being careful still about what he said and how he said it, as the administration has been all week. Our White House correspondent Savannah Guthrie is with us from there tonight. Savannah, you can see the frustration growing and you can see the words changing day by day.
And the intensity with which those words are spoken. This is an administration also working feverishly behind the scenes, telephone diplomacy happening at all levels of the government. The Secretary of State Hillary Clinton called the Egyptian foreign minister and tried to reach the prime minister as she flew to Munich. What's clear tonight is the U.S. wants a caretaker transitional government backed by the military until free and fair elections can be held. There are various proposals out there about who could lead such a government, including the Vice President Omar Suleiman. The backing of the military is key here. What's also clear is that the administration does not think Mubarak should or could hang on until September. But today in public, the president stopped short of directly telling Mubarak he has to leave right now. Instead, he appealed to Mubarak as a statesman to do the right thing.
Now, I believe that President Mubarak cares about his country. He is proud, but he's also a patriot. The key question he should be asking himself is, how do I leave a legacy behind in which Egypt is able to get through this transformative period? My hope is that he will end up making the right decision.
The president also condemned the intimidation of reporters and human rights activists, saying the world is watching Egypt right now, Brian.
Savannah Guthrie at the White House at the end of this week. Savannah, thanks. And we have an update tonight on 76-year-old Mary Thornberry of the United States, who thought she was living in the safest possible place in Egypt, nice real estate just off the main square. She instead found herself fighting off intruders, thugs, street gangs, defending herself inside her own apartment as the protests heated up. Lester Holt is in Amman, Jordan tonight. He's been reporting on her plight. Lester, what do we know about Mary's whereabouts and her safety tonight?
We know some good news, Brian. I spoke to her family just a few minutes ago. We can confirm she was escorted from her apartment near the square, near the violence, sometime last night after curfew. Her family heard from her today in an email. She doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't have a computer. She borrowed a computer of someone's at the airport in Cairo and said, "I'm okay. I'm at the airport. I'm very, very tired." The email, unfortunately, went to her son's work address. He didn't get it until later, so wasn't quite sure whether she got on a flight or not. We have subsequently learned that she is likely in a hotel in a much calmer part of Cairo tonight. They hope to finally connect very soon and get all the details. In terms of how she got out of that apartment, we're not quite sure. Her family will only say there were some individuals who came to her rescue, people who became aware of her plight, but they don't want to be identified. We hope to meet her in person very, very soon and get more on all this, Brian. But the good news, she is out of that apartment, out of harm's way tonight.
All right, Lester Holt in Amman, Jordan. Lester, thanks. Back now tonight to our top story, the story we covered firsthand all week in Egypt. Think of what it's like to watch the coverage for the nearly 150,000 people living in the U.S. who were born in Egypt. They're watching closely. They have a lot to say about it. Our report tonight from NBC's Mara Schiavocampo.
A world away from Cairo's Tahrir Square, a show of solidarity in New York's Times Square. A couple of miles away in New York's Little Egypt, a tight-knit community of Egyptian Americans run businesses and send their kids to school. Tamer Mohammed and his wife Fatma Alam moved here 9 years ago and opened a restaurant. But these days they can't think much about the business and spend much of their time frantically checking on family back home in Cairo.
Do you worry? Yes, too much.
Even their 8-year-old son Mohammed is anxious, scared his cousins and grandfather may be killed in the street violence.
Sad and a little bit confused because I thought Egypt was peaceful.
As the crisis in their country escalates, many gather in restaurants and smoke-filled coffee shops day after day, transfixed by news from home. Those here overwhelmingly side with anti-government protesters who want President Mubarak to leave office immediately, not at the end of his term.
He's only buying time.
Does seeing all of this make you want to be there and be a part of it?
Yes, I do.
Almost 150,000 Egyptians live in the U.S. Over the last week, thousands have rallied in support of the uprising in cities all over the country, from D.C. to Chicago to Los Angeles. Others show support in smaller ways. Ahmed Mustafa manages a restaurant in New York and wants everyone to know exactly how he feels.
I'm trying here to do something like that. I'm trying here say my voice, please, no more.
One of many Egyptians standing together, though they may be so far away from home. Mara Schiavocampo, NBC News, New York.
And when we come back, what are the moments that will live on forever from this past week while the whole world was watching?
Across the country and around the world, in the war zones and in the Gulf, with heroes from the front lines and heroes next door. NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, where the world unfolds nightly.
Finally tonight, millions and millions of people in this country have been following the drama in Egypt every day, in some cases every hour. It was incredible to witness it, difficult to process it, impossible to know how it ends. It turned from joyous to brutal in an instant. It may be changing again. But there were moments from this past week that may be indelible no matter what future Egypt itself might face in the end. Something enormously important is happening half a world away from us tonight.
I want another president for Egypt.
I take freedom today! There is now nothing less than chaos in the center of Cairo.
Waves of thousands of protesters rushed riot police, who drove them back with water cannons and, more often, tear gas.
People are being injured. We have seen several collapsing so far today.
When armored vehicles rolled into Cairo, they seemed to take no action against the demonstrators.
We've been afraid for 30 years and no one is afraid now.
Egypt is spinning out of control.
American tourists and diplomats are getting out.
I was ready to go.
This is what a civilian resistance looks like. Everyone is expressing something.
The young people in the internet, they started this revolution.
That's the end. That's the end of Mubarak era.
Mubarak announced he would not seek re-election in September.
The country is going down the drain unless Mubarak understands that he needs to go by the end of the week. My fear that this whole situation will go bloody.
We love our president, but he's a liar.
The atmosphere suddenly turned sour and toxic and is still disintegrating tonight.
You just saw someone hit by a Molotov cocktail who's trying to put himself out.
The sun can't come up fast enough for Cairo.
Tahrir Square has become a primitive, fortified camp for demonstrators. It's a bizarre scene with protesters defending the square with Molotov cocktails and even firebombs, like a medieval castle under siege.
We want to see this moment of turmoil turn into a moment of opportunity. The entire world is watching.
They are watching thanks to some very good journalists working in Cairo tonight in hostile conditions, make no mistake, and that work will go on and the reporting will continue. And so on behalf of our team on the ground there, that is our broadcast for this Friday night and for this week. Thank you for being here with us for all of it, and it's good to be back on home soil. I'm Brian Williams. Lester Holt will be with you this weekend from Amman, Jordan. We, of course, will look for you right back here on Monday night. In the meantime, have a good weekend. Good night.